Okay, I'm 2 minutes behind already, so I'm gonna start. Thank you for stepping by. So I'm gonna talk about Tailwind CSS, all right? So this is an introductory talk, so it's not gonna be like fully depth, like insights or how much you can do with this technology. The intention of this talk is to give you a glance of what you can do with Tailwind CSS and why it's awesome and why people is like excited about this framework. So I'm gonna start. So what is Tailwind CSS? So it's a low-level utility class framework. So yeah, so that's the definition. What means is that you only have like classes from Tailwind. So you have these classes that you can append to your markup. And then, so the styling is gonna change, right? So as you can see in this example in the homepage, like as these like guy like start adding like styling. So I'm gonna refresh so you can see. So you have like this clean markup and then you start adding classes, like start transforming like the output of the CSS. So he's like enlarging this text here and then setting this color to purple. And there's this other two to gray, right? And then he's aligning to the center like everything. So yeah, so only classes. So like I said, the scope of this talk is gonna be like a high level overview. I'm gonna let you know how the responsive classes work. And I'm gonna give you like the basic ones, the ones that you have to learn to like start like, working with this framework. And then I'm gonna dive a little bit into push CSS to like create minimal builds for your like Tailwind work. And then I'm gonna dive into shareable components. And I'm gonna give you a short list of resources. So before I proceed, does anyone has any question?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna proceed then. Yeah, but it's a, so the question is a framework or is not a framework? It is a framework, but the difference with other frameworks like Bootstrap and Foundation is that it only provides like classes. So like basic classes, and then from those classes, you can customize your designs. So it's like, so if you use Tailwind CSS, so you cannot know like if a site is built with Tailwind because it's not opinionated on how it looks like. Often, like when you visit a site, you can tell if the site is built with Foundation or Bootstrap because of how the buttons are like rendered and stuff like that. So that's not the case for Tailwind. So it's more flexible, but it's also more like lean. So you don't have opinionated components like a nav bar or accordion. So tab. Actually, you don't have like any JavaScript. So it's only CSS. And I'm gonna provide you an example of a styled component. So I created this code pen, which I'm gonna be sharing now. Yeah, it's this one. So I created this one. And it took me like not long, like 15 minutes or something like that. But I do know which classes to use. So for example, I have, is responsive. So and the coolest thing about this is that I'm not using like any CSS. So as you can see, this page has no CSS, it's just markup. So just classes on the markup. And then by you start like adding those classes, you can like change like the way this thing looks. Like for example, I'm using a grid here that is showing 3 elements. So I'm saying that I need a grid. And MD means that after the medium breakpoint, I'm gonna turn this into a grid. So I can make this responsive. So before medium breakpoint, it's gonna be like layout like in a single row. And then after this breakpoint is hit, it's gonna be arranged by a grid. And also I can tell like how many columns do I want for this grid. So if I change this 3 for a 2, and then I save, this is gonna be updated and it's gonna be displayed in 2 grids. And then if I need more like space in between those elements, I can just change the gap to like, let's say I'm gonna make 1, so it's gonna be tighter. So it's gonna look like this, right? But if I need more gap, I'm gonna make it 6. So it's gonna be like, so this is like how Tailwind works like overall. Each of these cards are the same. So you see all this like repetition, but in theory, like if you're working with a template, you remove these 2 elements and then your like markup is gonna be only this section here. And for this section inside, I'm using Flex. So again, you don't need to type like any CSS. You just like use those classes and start like building your components. I can change the font from a serif. So I'm using a font serif for the title. And I can tell like, hey, I need another type of font. So let me use the sans, save. And then I have the sans script here, the sans type, sorry. And then probably I want to make this larger. So I use it for Excel, and then it's gonna change this one in here. So this is like basically how Tailwind works. Like by manipulating the classes, you can like change the output of your CSS in general. And also like important thing is that Tailwind is responsive first. So you also think responsive first. So you create your styling for mobile, and then you use these breakpoints. And also another cool thing is that you could customize those breakpoints. Like for projects, like for example, in bands, where we have like different breakpoints and super specific breakpoints, you could like modify these variables here. And then Tailwind is gonna like adapt to these, like all the CSS to these breakpoints that you can set. So before I keep like talking, I would like to know if anyone has any questions so far.
No questions yet?
I have one question. You showed us, I think it was a class called Gap, and you switched it from maybe 1 to 6 or something like you were showing the gap in between, right? What does that number represent? Like what unit is it?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I don't know how to answer.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I know. So if you go to the documentation, oops, with gap. Yeah, oh, wow. So you have this columns gap, and then that size is based on rem. And, okay. And you can set your rem to be like specifically what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So in configuration, you can set your own rems.
Okay.
So the default, I think, is based on 14 pixels.
Okay.
So gap 1 is going to be like something like that. Yeah, so here we have. So gap 0 is going to be 0, obviously. And then gap 1 is going to be 25 rem. And yeah, so everything is, so the cool thing about Tailwind is that everything is based on rem, and you can customize that rem. So everything looks consistent. So that's what I like about Tailwind, because everything is consistent. And they have like this reset like style sheet that is gonna reset all your like styling, and then you start like typing these classes and everything start looking good and pretty.
Right.
And this is consistent. Like if you find like, for example, I use the text size, text sizes. Yeah, text is also based on rem.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't need to remember the amount of pixels. Like you just like start like typing those classes, and then it starts looking good, and then like you go with the flow.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, friends.
Any other question? Okay, I'm gonna proceed. Yeah, so these are like the ones that were helpful for me. So maybe for other people it's gonna be different, but the most like useful are these for me. Like this is the first ones that you need to like learn. So container. So like this, the name says, like container, like makes your contain for like any div. Oops. And it's based on your breakpoints. So if you modify your breakpoints in your configuration, these max widths are also gonna be like updated automatically. And this is good to like contain your whole like CSS. Like I'm using it here. So this div is containing everything. So if I remove the class container, it's gonna like spam full width. And MX auto, it has nothing to do with Mexico. So it's margin X on the X axis on the sides is gonna be auto. So it's gonna like always like put it in the middle. So if I add container again, save, everything is gonna be leaned on the left. And then I'm gonna say like margin X on the sides, set an auto. It's gonna be center the container. So that's why I put those classes in here. So these are like basics ones for like structuring. I mentioned grid a little bit. I mentioned flex. I'm not gonna dive deep, but everything that you can do with flex, like they have a class for it. So if you want to align the item center, or if you want to do like more advanced stuff, it's likely that that exists. Like for example, flex grow, if you want to grow some item automatically. Yeah, so, and then like everything is customizable via this tailwind.config.js. Another one is the width. So yeah, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Width. And the width is also set on rems. And you can set like auto to auto-fill like all the container. And you can also set like breakpoints. So if you prepend the MD width, you can change the width of like the container. And this is like the visual explanation of the width, right? And also another cool thing is that you can use like these fractions. So you can use the width 1/2 and width 1/2, it's gonna automatically like put the containers half and half, 50%. And you can use this with flex, and you can achieve the, yeah, so the guy is doing it with flex, and then it's like arranging the positioning.
Today I learned that slashes can be part of class names.
Yeah,
I would not have expected that.
Yeah, I also thought that it would break like something, or the class wouldn't be like read correctly.
Right. I have a question from the previous slide. Do we know? So when you say where it says there .grid, I take it that's a utility class or set of classes that uses CSS grid. Yes. And if that's accurate, do you know if Tailwind provides like some sort of reasonable fallbacks for older browsers that don't implement grid or do a bad job of implementing grid? I'm thinking obviously Internet Explorer.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Makes sense.
I can research that, but I don't think they support like all browsers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I'm gonna research that and I'm gonna get back to you with the answer. Another one that is useful is rounded. So it's the border radius. So it's kind of cool because also it's based also on these rem values. So if you want something like fully round, like a circle, you can use this rounded full. And then you can like manipulate if you want rounded on the top or the bottom. And actually, like in this example, I'm using the rounded class. So this bottom gets rounded, but not the top. Yeah, so rounded MD and rounded bottom, none. So this is for the image. Okay. BG, the color code is shared across like all the components. That's pretty cool because you learn those like classes, and it always goes from 100 to 800, and then it has like this like palette of colors, and also you can customize these colors. So that's also pretty cool. So you don't need to create your own classes in order to use like a palette of your own. And opacity and the background color. Margin and padding are super important, and also shadow. But it's super easy to understand like how to use them. So it's just basically like, for example, this anchor link is behaving like a button, and I have a padding of 2. So if I change the padding of 4, it's gonna have more padding in here. See, it's bigger. And then on hover state, I'm changing the background to blue, to a darker blue. And you can even like change the padding like between breakpoints. So you can do something like MD padding 0. And that's gonna like remove the padding on the breakpoint above medium. See?
Hang on a second, because this is a little bit kind of blowing my mind. This little prefix convention where you have some sort of condition like hover or medium and then a colon. So yes. you had one where it was like hover.
This one?
Yeah, hover background blue, blah, blah, blah. So does that apply to any utility class? Like, is every single utility class available can also have a hover component or a hover version of it?
I don't know if it's available for every single one, but right. Yeah, it's widely supported. And also you can create your own, these things, like these functions, like, I don't know how they call them, but you can create your own. And, wow. And even like, if you don't like this markup, you can create a class that inherits all these like classes, and then you're gonna have a clean markup with Tailwind CSS, but that's not in the scope of this talk.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be a question for me for the end of your talk, but I'm glad you addressed it.
Yeah, so you can have clean markup with Tailwind CSS, and I'm actually using in one of my personal projects, but I don't have slides for that or like examples. Yeah.
I'm very excited about the hover stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the shadow is a box shadow, and also it's like XS, SM, MD, and it just works, and it's beautiful. Like, so you don't need to remember. You just like type like XL, LG, MD, and then you're gonna have like an approximation of the like shadow that you need, and you have shadow inner. So the next thing is the most exciting for me is that you can. So if you don't customize Tailwind, and you just like start like creating components, whatever, you can share those components. Like, let's say, for example, I create a component in a raw like HTML file, and then I share it with Alfonso, and he likes just like import Tailwind CSS, and the component's gonna look the same. So I don't know if they realize that Tailwind will be good to share components around, and that's like another like big plus from my perspective. Something that maybe you can achieve with another frameworks like Bootstrap, but I'm gonna show you an example. Yeah. So this page, I like this page because the Tailwind components is like users make these components, and they like just like paste the markup. You can copy that markup, import it into your project, and start modifying. So you don't start from scratch. So you even have like these dashboards like made with Tailwind, like logins, like this Netflix clone. Yeah, so all these cards or whatever. And you can just go ahead and copy the code, paste it into your project, and it's gonna work. Like, it's gonna look the same. So, and I did that for this talk, so I'm gonna show you. So I went to this component code box, and I said like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm gonna steal this. So I get here, I copy all the code, and then I went to, so I have this Gatsby AS project. And it's not even like, it's using React instead of like HTML. It just changes the class for class name. And it's just like a raw copy paste. And I needed to modify this. So it didn't break. And then like, it just worked. And this is how it looks in my local. So I basically copied a component from somebody on the internet, and I can start like customizing. It just works out of the box. Yeah, and this is what, yeah, I copy this code, and then this is my Gatsby local, and it's looking like exactly the same. Even the photograph is the same. Okay, one of the problems that I realized when I was working in this project is that in this like pet project is that the build for the CSS was huge. It was like 4 megabytes. It was because Tailwind was like importing all the classes that they had. So I've used Purge CSS. This project basically removes the CSS that you're not using by inspecting your templates. So it goes search in your templates and see which classes are being used. And then the ones that are not used are going to be deprecated and removed. So Gatsby has a plugin that does that, which is this one, Gatsby plugin Push CSS. And so this same page, like before I made like the optimization of the CSS, this page was super huge. And I was like, that's crazy. So this is a single page that is waiting like 4 megabytes, like something is wrong. And then after like researching and seeing like the code, I realized that the CSS was huge because it was the whole framework. And then after installing that plugin and like executing, like Gatsby like went ahead and like review all my templates and then like remove like 19,000 like unused classes. And then from 2 megabytes, the CSS went to 10 kilobytes. So now the same page weighs in total, like with everything, like less than 200 kilobytes. And it's looking the same and behaving the same. So this step is super important if you're using Tailwind CSS.
That's awesome, because that was going to be one of my questions. Everything you were saying, I was like, I feel like this is leading up to a terrible CSS file.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, no. I mean, I actually went ahead and I deployed a personal page and I executed like the Google Lighthouse like for performance, and I was like, oh, this is like super huge. So and then I figured out that I needed push CSS. So resources, Tailwind CSS, of course, tailwindcomponents.com. I like this page very much. And then there is like a repo with a lot of resources. So yeah, you can go ahead and like check out this repo. It's super cool. So it has like a lot of stuff that you can use. Tailwind CSS is super famous on the Laravel community, and it started like gaining momentum on that community. And then also is widely used in Gatsby. I don't think Drupal is being like that successful in Drupal. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because templates are hard to parse in Drupal because everything is kind of mixed, like how you add classes and stuff like that. And that's all I have for you guys. It's time for questions.
Thanks, Israel. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do have one question. So we were talking earlier about how you can import like Tailwind code, and I guess my question is about what the source code is like. Is it available as Sass mixins, or is it just CSS that you would import into your Sass and then you would extend different classes? Like, what does that look like?
It's actually not using Sass, it's using post CSS.
Post CSS.
And then it has a lot of plugins, like many plugins. Like from one project that I have, I was able to nest like the CSS like we do in Sass.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of transparent. So I don't need like to do anything else. And yeah, so it's post CSS.
Very cool.
Dan, you had a question, Dan? Okay.
No, I love utility CSS. This is the Tailwind looks to be from you explaining it looks to be the smoothest out of all the utility CSS frameworks.
I want to share I did this like landing page for my personal project in a weekend, and from like zero, like learning Tailwind to deploy, it was like 4 hours. And I think it looks good, so I'm gonna share it with you guys. Yeah, so this is the page that I did, the landing page that I did in like 3 or 4 hours. Like, but I didn't like knew anything about like Tailwind. And of course it's responsive.
Nice work, man.
And thank you. And yeah, so everything is built with Tailwind. And of course is deployed to Netlify and is super performant. So after you catch everything and you like submit like something. And it's using Netlify forms, so you don't need to have a backend for the form.
So question about this, you were saying how this was pretty quick to scaffold up and do. What are the time savings of like using a tool like this versus just writing, writing the CSS without this tool? And do you find it, worth it? And then like, how does that compare with like the added DOM weight? And is that even a concern? This is me asking questions, not understanding the implications of all this.
So if you are concerned about the DOM weight, you can create your own classes, and all these classes that you append to this element, you can add it to a CSS file, and then your like markup is going to be clean, and also like your build is going to be small. So I think from my perspective, this is a way of like standardizing your CSS and do stuff super fast. And I will use this to do prototyping for clients, like, and I will also like to my design team, I will like give this like a spacing, so we are on the same channel, and it will be like super quick to build new sites and new themes based on this tool, from my perspective. So yeah, there is like a lot of winnings we can have by using it.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about bringing in a design team who may not feel comfortable enough writing CSS, but adding classes to some markup is a much lower barrier to entry. And so I'm sure this could really help improve that communication and really integrate developers into the design process, because you can speak the same language. They can prototype a lot faster and share something with you. And then maybe for you, it's just like, oh, okay, you want these classes, so I'll just create a class or some other selector, whatever it needs to be, that encompasses all of those rules that you added in your prototype. Job done, and you can then spend your time, writing better JavaScript or whatever. You don't have to spend so much time putting the finer points on CSS. So that sounds like a huge win.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot of stuff that you can do. Like, for example, you can have like group hovering and stuff like that for mega menus. And so there is so much you can do. Wow. And it's super flexible. So I will invite you guys to try it. If you want some help, like getting started, like you can even use my code pen and clone it and like start testing in the browser. So you don't need to even like have an environment for testing this framework. And it will be cool to share components with you guys once you, like if you get excited about this technology. And I think we're about like right on time. So I don't want to like keep anyone else. If I'm gonna open like just for 1 or 2 questions, if anyone has. If not, I'm gonna thank you for being here.
I do have a question.
Please go ahead, Mark.
I don't want to start a war of any kind, but I mean, say I've been using Foundation for years, and what I saw there reminded me of Foundation. Oh, I want to do something. I just add, GT dash whatever. So why would I move away from something I'm really used to, and I can work with it quickly, to Tailwind CSS? It seems like it's basically saying, you know what, Italian is a better language if you want to say something romantic. So, but I'm not going to learn Italian just to be a better lover, because I don't have that capacity. I've already like having trouble enough with Estonian and English. Like, how many different languages or ways of doing something do I need? Is kind of what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It looks great.
I think that's a great question. I will do it because so with frameworks like Bootstrap or Foundation, they are not like really performant. So you need to include like a lot of code that you're not going to use. Like for example, with Tailwind, you just need 2 classes to make a container and something responsive. With Bootstrap, for example, which is the one I have more experience, you need to go to the SAS and then like extract the SAS that makes the stuff responsive. And then it's super complex to like extract little bits of stuff. You can even like do a progressive migration. So let's say that you're in Foundation and you want to use Tailwind. You like start replacing the classes in some containers and you have both, but then like Tailwind is gonna be minimal build. So I guess it's performance at the end of the day, you know, including like a lot of SAS that you're not gonna use, and including and avoiding the inclusion of JavaScript that you're not gonna use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess we don't have any more questions.
Thanks a lot, Israel. This was a great intro.
Thank you.
We got to find a project to use it on.
Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, that would be exciting. All right, guys. If you have any more questions, I can answer on Slack. Thank you very much for being here. And see you around.
Thanks, Israel.
Thanks, Israel.
Thank you, Israel.
Have a good one. Bye.